What's up, Sales RXers? Look, with outbound conversion rate benchmarks being as low as 3%, it's no secret that it's really tough right now for a lot of sellers. And if you're an individual contributor or a senior leader in marketing, RevOps, sales, any role that has a revenue related metric that you have to attain, it's time to find a better pipeline channel. So what's better than selling to someone who doesn't know you or your product? Selling to someone who does. This is where Champify comes in. Champify monitors key contacts at accounts like champions, post-sale sponsors, admins, heavy users, and they enrich that data to detect job changes, determine relevancy for outreach, and then assigns and alerts reps with those newly assigned leads. So if you haven't tried out Champify yet, you need to give it a shot. Stop spinning your wheels with outbound heavy sales motions and start selling to people you've already sold to. You can click the link below in the show description for an extended proof of concept and free data test from the team at Champify. What you'll do is click podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Let them know that the Sales RX podcast sent you so they know who to give the VIP treatment to. Now let's jump into today's episode.
Organizations that send, 10, 5, 3 salespeople into video calls and don't realize that every video call is a live experience. Like it's a live opportunity to sell your brand in not just the words, but every single pixel on screen matters. Every single pixel tells a story. And I think that that's something that gets lost because it seems as though the technology to self-produce or produce on an individual contributor scale feels overwhelming. And that's just because of lack of knowledge. And, businesses that catch on to the fact that showing up on video calls in a way that's congruent with their brand's values, with their brand's goals, and what they ultimately want to communicate to that customer, it is a holistic end-to-end experience, right? It's not like your product speaks for itself always, right? Your ambassadors are part of deliberating or delivering that message. And it comes through in 3 dimensions in a way, right? It's not just the PowerPoint presentation. It's not just that the guy shows up in a nice shirt, right? It's everything together that tells a story. Your sensory experiences, your audio matters, your video matters, the quality of your video matters, right? The composition of your body on screen, your body language, like all of these things are really, it's cumulative. It's not a single thing that wins or loses the perception battle. And, first perceptions are like 90% of the game, right?
Yeah.
You show up one time and you ruin that first perception, that initial, that initial moment, it speaks volumes. And as a salesperson myself, prior to starting Deskrig, I learned this the hard way. I wasn't a video guy trying to sell video to sales guys. I was a sales guy that realized video told a story. And especially for startup companies, like startup companies that don't have brand recognition, startup companies that are lifting off the ground, like they're competing against the Goliaths of an industry, right? And they feel like the opportunities they have are diminished by the fact that they don't have a huge budget to travel out and take somebody out to eat, that they don't have all of these huge customer brand quilt of multi-million-dollar businesses that have worked with them in the past. You have to be able to get past, especially in B2B deals, right? You have to be able to get past the gatekeeper to even allow your product's merits to be heard. And a lot of that has to do with perception. So, that's really, I think, what the kind of the whole idea of virtual perception is about. Is about showing up in a way that ensures that your business is represented for its merits, for the value that it's ultimately going to bring to the customer that you're trying to sell.
Yeah, it's an interesting space because I think when we went to work from home because of COVID, like nobody was judging you if your background didn't, looked a little messy or you had something there, or you have kids. Like there was a lot of empathy, and I get that. But I think there is now that this is the new norm. Like it's time for a change. Like step into my office. Well, what is your office environment like? How do I perceive? Like subconsciously, people might not agree with, oh, I have to have a decent looking background. I have to have decent audio visual equipment. But subconsciously, that person is judging you in that call, even if they wouldn't admit it, because they go, wow, you have this blurry MacBook webcam video with this bad blurred background and your audio sounds terrible. And I don't really feel like, I feel like you just hopped on this call. You're in your underwear. You know what I mean? Like I get this perception that it's still like work from home in March of 2020 and not this perception that I'm this person that could, ultimately help you hit your quota, and you could also provide a benefit to me by changing my business with your point solution or whatever it is you're offering. Like, I think it's weird when I hop on calls with people and I'm almost like, is this call important to you? Because it basically looks like you might even be at a coffee shop right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, is this just an inconvenience in the middle of your day that you had to do because somebody put this on a round robin for you as an account executive? Because I've been on tons of sales calls lately, and it surprises me like how behind people are with video. And as you said, like first impressions last a lifetime. There's only two people in my life that have ever overcome their negative first impression, and when they did, it was really, what they did was monumental that overcame that. But in my professional life, there are two people that made bad first impressions on me, and they're the only ones that have ever overcome it. But most other people, it's like, yep. And then the product is lackluster, the support is lackluster. It all kind of trickles down from that first impression the more that you get into it. So I'd be curious to hear, as someone who helps companies solve for this problem of not providing a thorough digital experience, why is there such a lack of adoption and buy-in? Is it strictly just money? Is it that there's a hard way of calculating the ROI of first impressions and that virtual experience? What do you find is kind of the reason for companies not diving in a little deeper to enable their employees to deliver these better virtual experiences?
Well, first off, I think that it doesn't seem to be a priority from the top down. And so you find you'll have some high performing individuals that were high performing before, and it's no surprise to people that then they're the ones that are showing up in a way that's impressive. And to your point of what you said, like a second ago, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And that's the perception that people get. And so again, first off, it's got to be, unfortunately, like most things in the corporate space, it's got to be a top-down approach, because they're the ones that are going to be funding ultimately the equipment and the infrastructure necessary. And it's also a cross-organizational problem. It's marketing and sales have to work together to bring their brand into their video calls, and that's a challenge in many ways already. PowerPoint presentations is one I always think about. It's like, if you let a salesperson get a hold of the PowerPoint, the marketing department just faints. They're like, oh, they've done everything wrong here, right? But the last thing, and I think really the biggest problem, is there is not a company that's really figured out a way to make it scalable yet. And so it's still left up to the individual. And if you leave it up to the individual, it's going to be the high performers every time that show up ready to look the best, because they understand that that's going to set them up for success. And they want to stand out because they know that's ultimately going to reflect on their bottom line at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it even starts for me in prospecting, and not enough people do video already. Maybe that's because they aren't confident about where they're enabled. But video prospecting, video outreach is great, even throughout the sales cycle, sending video recaps of your discovery call, cutting clips of your demos that were relevant to what their pain points are that lead to their overarching problem. And what's going to be more clickable? Something where it is a webcam from a computer with a blurred out background or something like that, or something like you or my background, right, where it really pops and our skin is glowing and we got these pearly whites and we're smiling, we got this nice lit up background and the audio is really good.
Right.
You know, when you're listening to it and you're more engaged and you're like, wow. I'm not saying, like, I know we've talked a lot before. I know you've sunk probably tens of thousands of dollars into all your setups and your equipment and all your toys. I'm about halfway there. You know, I'm getting there, but I know it's can be expensive for the average Joe, let's call it. But there's probably a basic $500 to $1,000 investment you could make, right, as a leader for your sales team to get per person to get them to a place where their video outreach and their virtual experiences that they're doing on these Zoom calls make them pop a little bit more. Is that kind of, in your experience, a good roundabout budget that they could start with? Like, it's not really that expensive,
Yeah,
is it?
yeah. If you get a cheap green screen, like our web around as an example, that's the one that goes on your chair. That effectively gives you superpowers, and that's $70. You grab a Stream Deck, which is 150. You're in 220 now. And then if you have a decent enough computer to run tools like OBS or the app, strange name, but uh, those tools, just right there, you can deliver a virtual experience to your customers that's impressive and stands out for very little. The delta becomes knowledge, right? It becomes buy-in to bring training together that ultimately allows us to scale across all of your salespeople. And making it part of the onboarding process, just like you have SOPs or other trainings that go into onboarding a new salesperson, teaching them how to value sell their product, learning about the features and benefits, like everything that goes into understanding the product and ultimately delivering it. Virtual presence has to be a component of that overall effort, and it typically, again, it becomes an afterthought because of the perception that you do need to spend $2,000 on a camera and $500 on this and $3,000 on that. And it's not really the case. Does it improve the production overall? Absolutely. Every small incremental step you make, just like as a salesperson, we invest in coaches. We invest in additional trainings. We're always learning and investing in ourselves. But most of that is not was not relevant, rather, before COVID, the way it is now in the video space. And I think that it's just really about there's got to be a company that needs to find a way to democratize high quality virtual presence and allow it to be scalable to where it doesn't feel like a huge effort to overcome, getting people on board with it. And, you really don't, $500 is a great budget. You could start there. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you've covered this virtual experience, which is the virtual sales call, the discovery call, the demo, any follow-up you might do where you're walking through a proposal on screen, something where you might be in a virtual sales call, virtual room with your prospect. I touched a little bit on video outreach, right? Top of funnel when you're doing prospecting and things of that nature. I think even farther behind the funnel, even higher on the funnel to add to that, maybe even pre-funnel, you are also now enabling your reps to go create valuable content for their community and act as a lead generation system. So when I think about $1,000 per rep, if I'm a AE director and I run a team of 5 AEs, I'd rather spend $5,000 on some gated content to bring in some low quality leads that might turn into 1 or 2 deals? Or would I rather go enable my reps forever to not only improve the deals we already have and their interactions and experiences with them, as well as help their top of funnel outreach by enabling them to create high quality video, but also act as a lead generation system by giving them a way to tell stories and a way to deliver that value and that content to their community? I think I would choose the latter, right? But I think, to your point, the delta is the
Absolutely.
information. But enter
Yes.
Deskrig. And so talk a little bit about Deskrig in your community, because I know I'm speaking as someone who interacts with the Discord and with the community, but there are places, if you find them, because, like, right, if somebody spun up an OBS, right, instance right now and tried to get their DSLR in, like, I actually had to walk through that with you. It is a little technical, so the information is tough and it's hard to troubleshoot online because I've definitely used the Deskrig community my fair share of times. But you do have these communities like the Deskrig community where you can leverage them to better get the information or hire someone like yourself to set this up for the company. Tell everybody a little bit about Deskrig and the value that you offer to the community of those who are trying to create content and deliver better virtual experiences.
Yeah. So, as you know, we started a lot thinking about the hardware that goes into these things. And we realized very quickly that, replacing full setups is a lot for people, and it could be expensive. And we do think about the future of workstations for virtual employees being turnkey purchasing systems. So you don't buy a camera, you don't buy a microphone and a stream deck and all these things. You buy a car and you turn the key and it works. Right? You press the button and the air conditioner turns on. And unfortunately, still to this day, the hardware itself is still much pre-Model T era. Order it all, put it all together. But ultimately, what we realized is we're still quite a ways away from there. So focusing on the infrastructure tool like OBS and thinking of it like WordPress for websites. And that's really what I equate it to because it's also open source. There's a whole community of developers that are creating themes and template systems like Cornerstone or Genesis or whatever it is to drag and drop build websites through tools like WordPress as an infrastructure background. And so we've now developed Deskrig virtual experiences, Deskrig VX, and that is the same thing. So we are creating templates that make it easy for your entire organization to scale tools like OBS without your team needing to use OBS Studio to learn OBS Studio. And then we tie that directly to the Stream Deck in some controller UI that's very visual, it's tactile, and ultimately your salespeople, they can work a remote control. They go home and they do it every day. Right? They push little applet buttons. So it's the same experience that we've tried to bring over. We think about, bringing these ideas of usability. We realize that ultimately, if we want to scale virtual presence solutions for large organizations, it has to be as easy as turning the key, starting the engine, putting it in drive, and then just driving away. That's as simple as it needs to be. You shouldn't even have to have OBS Studio up in the foreground along with Zoom, along with your note taking, along with PowerPoint. This should be, it should be as easy, like I said, as just turning on the engine and driving away. And that's ultimately where we're at now, is focusing on delivering templates that tie the tactile Stream Deck button system, which is a $150 investment. It's not very big for any organization to scale that across all of their brand ambassadors, right? Like you were talking about, that's a very small investment for what it ultimately brings to the table. And not only doing it for video calls, and you touched on this earlier, but the Deskrig virtual experiences templates, the subscription ultimately gives you access to purpose-built templates. So rather than your rep having to record a video, send it to the marketing department editing it and putting the subtitles over it and all these different things that ultimately slow down production and reduce the overall volume of quality content you're able to deliver into your respective industry ecosystem, it should be, I'm going to press start. In 3 seconds, it's going to start recording. I know that this specific cold outreach template, as an example, has an introduction to who I am, an introduction to why I think, you have a problem I can solve, and then how we can solve it, and then how to reach out. And it's the same template every single time. And it's 3 buttons: start, record, stop. And it's that easy. And so it becomes a repeatable, almost muscle memory for them to easily be able to pull up these purpose-built templates for video call, for a cold outreach template, for a follow-up video, for an email reach out, whatever those things are. that the organization in their sales process have found to be something that moves the needle. We create a template that they can just scale across the entire organization. Simple script becomes the same thing every time, and ultimately it makes it easy for our customers to implement video solutions for their entire organization.
So just to hit on what you said there, it's really not that hard. You just have to make that small investment. It's not. It's so inexpensive when you really think of the efforts. I've been working on trying to create a LinkedIn post that shows my podcast quality from my third episode that I ever did, and it's just like mind blowing to see professionally what's happened to me since then. The amount of business that I've been able to win because as my video got better, my outreach got better. The way I was delivering content got better. My storytelling got better. Obviously, it didn't happen over time, but it was a combination of different people in my network. One of them also being you, who I was able to leverage and get better over time. But you really have this way that you've kind of compacted those years of learning into a solution that can enable teams even quicker, which I think is really awesome. And I think that we just need to. I'm interested to see companies put more priority and focus on that because I'm a huge proponent of video. You send me a video prospecting email, that sucker's getting opened up. I'm reading it, right? You create decent content, even decent. I'm not saying perfect. I'm saying decent content on LinkedIn that grabs my attention and I watch it for 20 to 30 seconds and get something out of it. Create some great TikTok content. I'm watching it, and I could potentially become a lead, as with anybody else who's engaging on LinkedIn and TikTok and Instagram and all these other platforms, but we just don't have enough of it yet. Garren, this has been great. Really appreciate you taking the time. As we close out, if people want to get in touch with you, learn more about Deskrig, how can they get in contact with you for everybody that's listening?
Yeah. I love LinkedIn. Chet, thank you so much for having me. Obviously, I've followed you for a long time. We've been friends for a while, and so it's awesome to see your podcast grow and you take advantage of video the way you have. And I'm super excited to hear that it's been successful for you. But to reach out to me, LinkedIn, you can go to deskrig.com, deskrig.com, and we've got contact methods there. And you can also reach out through LinkedIn and get to know me a little bit through my content.
Awesome. And we'll put all that information and resources in the show notes below, as well as links to interact with the Sales Doctor and the Sales RX community further. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Garren, for being here, and we'll see everybody on the next one. Talk to you soon.